Do you know why the computer Mike is happy and the computer Bob is sad? Because the computer Mike got an IP address that is 192.168.1.100. But the computer Bob doesn't get an IP address. That's why he is sad. He is not able to communicate with the other devices in this network. He is not able to connect to the internet. Now the question is, how the computer Mike got an IP address? Who was assigned that IP address? Let's find out in this chapter. In this chapter, we will talk about the static and dynamic IP addresses. Welcome to the video. Welcome to CCNA 200-301, Implementing and Administering Cisco Solutions, Chapter number 51, Static and Dynamic IP Address. Learn CCNA with Irash Academy. I have placed the complete CCNA playlist at the top right corner of the video information bar. In this chapter, we will talk about the static IP address. We will talk about the dynamic IP address. We will see how to configure static IP address in your computer. We will see how to configure the dynamic IP address in your computer. And finally, we will talk about the DHCP process, which is called DORA. Bob is a student who is learning CCNA. One of his dreams was to get a brand new computer to support his study. And for that, Bob went to a computer shop to buy a computer. He selected a brand new computer as per his requirement. Bob brought that computer to his home and connected that to his network. But unfortunately, this brand new computer was sad because it was not able to connect to internet. What happened here? Why this brand new computer couldn't connect to the internet? Is it because of some connectivity issue? Is Bob connected this computer properly to the network? Let's see. Now let's see how Bob connected this computer into the network. Bob wanted to connect this computer to the internet, so he purchased an internet connection from the service provider. Service provider offered him an internet router and installed in his house. Bob connected his brand new PC to this internet router so that he can access the internet in this PC. But here, unfortunately, this PC was sad because it was not able to communicate to the internet. What would be the problem happen here? What is the basic thing a network device required to communicate with the network? Whatever your network is, each device should get an IP address to communicate with the network. That is a mandatory parameter. So here, if this computer need to communicate with the network, it should get an IP address. The server need to communicate with the network, then it should get an IP address. And for this laptop, it should get an IP address to communicate with the network. Even this smartphone, it should get an IP address to communicate with the network. So it doesn't matter what kind of device it is. If it's need to communicate with the network, it should get an IP address. So from where the device is getting the IP address, how they are getting the IP address, we will talk about it. And when we talk about assigning an IP address to a device, there is two kind of IP address available. One is the static IP address and the second thing is the dynamic IP address. So first we will see what is the static IP address. What is this meaning of static? There are multiple meanings for the word static and some of them are fixed, unchanged, stable, steady, unvarying, constant. And what is the meaning of all these words? The meaning of all these words pointing to one point, that something is unchanged or unvarying. That means the static IP address, once we provide it to a device, then that's remain static, unchanged, unvaried. So when we give a static IP address to a device, it stay there forever until you change the IP address. So this kind of IP address are called static IP address. And how a device is getting the static IP address? We need to manually configure the static IP address in the device. For example, just see this network diagram. There are 4 PCs are available and which are connected to a network switch. And here all these PC need to get an IP address to communicate with the network. So how we are going to assign the IP address to these PCs? Who is going to assign the IP address to these PCs? The answer is the network engineer or the network administrator who manage this network. he manually go to each PC in this network and assign one static IP address into it. For example, first he go to the PC1 and assign an IP address to it, 192.168.1.10. Then he go to the second PC and assign one IP address to it, that is 192.168.1.20. Then to the third PC, 192.168.1.30. Then the last and final PC, that is 192.168.1.40. So in this way, he need to go to each devices in this network and assign a static IP address manually into that, so that the PC can get an IP address and it can communicate with the other device without any problem. This is the concept of static IP addresses. And doesn't matter these PCs are rebooted or you restart multiple times, it doesn't change the IP address unless you change it. It stays there forever till you change it. This is the beauty of static IP address. And what is the occasion of a device should assign a static IP address in a network? The answer is very simple. If you want to keep one device in one IP address, then you need to assign the static IP address into that device. And what is that occasion? Like one device IP should not be changed at any manner. For example, the printer. If the printer IP address change frequently, then people won't be able to print. If the server IP is getting changed frequently, then people won't be able to access the services configured. So in this kind of situation, depends on the services you access in your network, you need to assign the static IP address into the critical devices so that its IP doesn't change and people can access the services without any interruption. How to configure a static IP address in your computer? To configure the static IP address in your computer, you need to go to the network interface of your computer and assign the static IP address manually into that computer. For that, if you are using a Windows machine, first of all you need to go to the control panel, then go to the option Network and Internet, and from here go to the Network and Sharing Center. From here, left side you can see Change Adapter Setting. So click on the Change Adapter Setting. So it will display all the network interfaces in your computer. So in which network interface you need to configure the static IP address, go to that network interface. In my case, I am going to use the Ethernet 3. Then right click there, then go to Properties. So when you go to the Properties, you can see multiple options here. From that option, you need to select Internet Protocol version 4, IPv4, because nowadays we are using IPv4 for the network communication. Then select the IPv4 option, then go to Properties. So here you can see two options under the General tab. One is the Obtain IP address automatically and the second one is Use the following IP address. So to assign a static IP address into this device manually, you need to select the second option, which is called Use the following IP address. So when you select that option, then you will be able to enter the IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS server to that interface. So here I am going to assign the IP address 192.168.1.10. Then the subnet mask, I am going to use 255.255.255.0. Depends on your network design, you can use the subnet mask according to that network. In my case, I am using a class C subnet, so I am using the 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. Now go to the default gateway. And what is your default gateway? In my case, it is 192.168.1.1. That is the default gateway. That is the IP address of my router. Now, use the following DNS server address. Here, you need to fill the IP address of your DNS server. Why do we need a DNS server? So, if you didn't provide a DNS server here, then your PC cannot access the internet. Because to access the internet, the DNS IP address should be provided. DNS stands for Domain Name System, which is converting an IP address into a host name and vice versa. So without configuring this DNS server, you won't be able to resolve a URL into the IP address. So here in my case, my DNS is my internet router, that is 192.168.1.1. In your case, maybe you have a DNS server in your network, or maybe there is another DNS device available in your network, or maybe it is same your default gateway like my case. So use it wisely. Just identify what is IP address of your DNS server, then enter here. Then after you enter here, there is another option for an alternative DNS server. So that means if you have an alternative DNS server, a second DNS server in your network, you can enter it here. In my case, there is no alternative DNS server, so I will not provide that here. So here, after I provide the IP address, subnet mask, default gateway and the DNS server, I can click OK. Then close this window so that your network interface get the static IP address which I have configured. To verify this thing, just double click in this interface, then go to the details option. Here you can see what is the IP address you have configured, what is the subnet mask you have configured, what is the gateway you have configured, and what is the DNS server you have configured. So this is how you configure a static IP address in your computer. Now let's see what is dynamic IP address. What is the meaning of the word dynamic? The word dynamic means it is changeable, variable, and not constant. I will explain more about the dynamic IP address. For that, let's consider a simple network which contains 4 PC which are connected to a network switch. This is a local area network. And what we were doing for static IP addressing. In static IP addressing, the network engineer was going to each device in this network and assigning one IP address manually into that device. Since there are limited number of devices, it is okay. It is possible. It is practical. Here you can see 4 PCs are available in this network. So it doesn't take that much time to configure the static IP address in this 4 PC. But what about the large network which contain hundreds and thousands of network? Is it possible for a network engineer to go to each device in that network and assign one static IP address into it? It is not practical at all, because it consumes a lot of time, lot of effort. So this is not the practical way to do that thing. So that's why the concept of dynamic IP address we are talking here. So in this dynamic IP addressing model, there would be one additional device which is called DHCP. And what is this DHCP stands for? It stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. It helps to configure the host dynamically. And what is this DHCP server does? In DHCP server, we can configure DHCP scope. And what is this scope means? The scope means the range of an IP address. So in this DHCP server, we can configure multiple range of IP address. And when a device connected to that network, the DHCP server can offer one IP address from that scope into that device. So this is the concept of DHCP. So here we have 4 computers which is called PC1, PC2, PC3 and PC4. The PC1 and PC2 are connected in VLAN 10 and its network ID is 192.168.1.0/24. The PC3 and PC4 are connected to VLAN 20 and their network ID is 192.168.2.0/24. So in this situation, what if you want to configure the DHCP scope in this DHCP server so that the DHCP server can offer the IP address to those devices? For that, we need to create 2 DHCP scope in this DHCP server. The scope number 1, we can call it VLAN 10 because it is pointing to the VLAN 10 network. And we can say the range of IP address here 192.168.1.10 to 192.168.1.100. That means the IP address starting from 10 to 100 from that range can be added into that DHCP scope 1. So if any devices are eligible under that scope, they can get an IP address randomly from this scope. And the second scope is for the VLAN 20. We can say starting IP address 192.168.2.10 and ending IP address is 192.168.2.100. So this means the IP address from 10 to 100 has been added to the scope number 2. And if any device from the VLAN 20 can eligible to get an IP address randomly from that range. So that means when the PC1 requests for an IP address to the DHCP server, the DHCP server check the PC1 is from which VLAN and it can understand it is from the VLAN 10. And what is the scope that is pointed to the VLAN 10? The scope pointed to VLAN 10 is the scope 1. And what is the range of IP address available in that scope? It is from 10 to 100. So the PC1 get the first IP address which is 192.168.1.10. And now when the PC2 requests for the IP address to DHCP server, the DHCP server check each checklist like from which VLAN this request is coming and what is the range of IP address available in that scope and what is the next free IP address it can offer to the PC2. So here we can say our range is from 10 to 100 and the IP address 10 is already given to the PC1. So the next available one is 11 and that will be given to the PC2. So the PC2 get an IP address 192.168.1.11. Now when PC3 requests for the IP address to the DHCP server, it check the request is coming from which VLAN and it is coming from VLAN 20 and what is the range of that VLAN 20? It is from 192.168.2.10 to 192.168.2.100. So which IP address is available there? So the which IP address the PC3 can get? It can get the first IP address from the scope range, that is 192.168.2.10. Now when the PC4 requests for the IP address, it get the next IP address in that range, that is 192.168.2.11. So in this way, doesn't matter how many devices are available in your network. Depends on that, you can configure the DHCP scope in your DHCP server. You can define the range of the IP address. Then all the devices get the IP address automatically from the DHCP server. It is not required a manual process like a network engineer jump into each devices and configure a static IP address into that. In smaller network, it works well, but when there is a large number of network devices, it is not practical to follow. So that's why we have to use one DHCP server in our network, and this DHCP server manage the configuration part of all the network devices in that network. Now when a device connect to a network which has a DHCP server, what is actually happening between that PC and the DHCP server? Let's see that. To understand this, first we need to understand the DHCP process. What is the DHCP process? The DHCP process is called DORA. So what is this DORA process? To understand this DHCP process or the DORA, we need to understand what is happening between the client and the DHCP server. So what is the meaning of client? Client means the device who is requesting the IP address to the DHCP server, that is called client. And DHCP server itself, the server that manages the DHCP process. What is the communication happening between these two? Between this client and DHCP server. As soon as a client device connected, whether it is a PC or any other device, when it is connected to the network, first of all, it check whether it has a static IP address assigned or not. If it has a static IP configure, then the computer will use that IP address for the network communication. It doesn't ask any other question to anyone, even to the DHCP server. But if the computer cannot see a static IP address assigned to that, then it need an IP address, right? To communicate with the network and to communicate with the other devices, it's need an IP address. So if it cannot see a static IP address assigned to that, then it will broadcast a IP address request to the network. It will look for a DHCP service available in the network, and this process is called DHCP discover. So as soon as the device connected to network and it cannot find the static IP address, then it send a broadcast signal to the entire network to discover the existence of a DHCP server, so that it can request for an IP address. So when the DHCP server receive this request, it will understand, okay, somebody from this network is requesting for an IP address. So it can send a response back to that client saying that I am a DHCP server. I can offer you my DHCP service. Would you like to continue? So when the client PC receive this DHCP offer, it understands that there is a DHCP server available and it is ready to offer me its DHCP service. So it sent a DHCP request back to the server. And what will be that request? That request is saying, I would like to accept your DHCP offer. Please give me an IP address. So when the DHCP server receives the DHCP request, it will check from where this request is coming, from which network is coming, and what is the scope available in DHCP service, and it will match all the criteria and see which IP address is available to assign, and it will see which IP address free to assign to this device. Then it send another response to the client, which is called DHCP acknowledgement. So this process means I have acknowledged your DHCP request and this is the IP address I am giving to you. Please use it for your network communication. So the client accept that IP address and it use that IP address for any kind of communication in that network. So this is the DHCP process. This is called DORA. And why it is called DORA? Because this is the process of discover, offer, request and acknowledgement, and this all coming together as DORA. The process is simple. First the client machine discover the DHCP server, then the DHCP server offer the DHCP service to the client, then the client request for the DHCP service, then the DHCP server acknowledge that request and provide the IP address to the client. So all these four processes together we call DORA, and which stands for discover, offer, request and acknowledgement. Let's see how to configure a dynamic IP address in your computer. To get an automatic IP address from a DHCP server, you need to configure your network interface according to that. For that, first of all, you need to go to the control panel in your computer, then go to the network and intranet option, then go to the network and sharing center, and from left side click on the change adapter setting. So it will display all the network interfaces that is available in your computer. And let's go to the Ethernet 3. This is my network interface, and here at this moment you can see it is disconnected. You can see the cross mark here in red color. That means this interface is not connected to any network. The cable is unplugged. So from here, right click on Ethernet 3, go to properties, then go to the Internet Protocol version 4, that is the IPv4, then go to the properties option. Here two options are available as we discussed earlier. One is obtain an IP address automatically, and second one is use the following IP address. So in this case of static IP address, I already said you need to choose the second option, which is called use the following IP address. Then you need to enter the IP address, subnet mask, default gateway and DNS server automatically. But if you would like to provide a dynamic IP address in your computer that is offered by a DHCP server, then you need to choose the first option, which is called obtain an IP address automatically. So that means it can get an IP address automatically from the DHCP server as per its offer. And in the second section, you also need to click on obtain DNS server address automatically, so that the whatever DNS server configured in that DHCP scope, your computer will receive as it is. But in case if you want to use a different DNS server that is not configured in your DHCP scope, then you can choose the second option here, then enter that value manually here, enter the IP address here. But in my case, I am going to select the first option, obtain the DNS server address automatically. Then click OK, close. So I have configured my computer network interface in a way that it can receive the IP address automatically from the DHCP server. Now how to check is it working or not? For that, first of all, you need to connect this computer into your network. At this moment it is disconnected, cable is not plugged. Now I am going to plug the cable and see is my PC is getting an IP address automatically from the DHCP server or not. So let me plug the cable. So as soon as I plug the cable, you can see that cross mark has disappeared and it was showing identifying the network. Then finally it is connected to the network which is called Trojan 5G. That means my PC got an IP address from the DHCP server and it is connected to the network successfully. Now let's verify the detail. For that, double click on Ethernet 3, then go to the detail option. Here you can see this is the IP address received from the DHCP server 192.168.1.135. This is the subnet mask received and when the lease obtained. So when the DHCP server providing an IP address, there is something called lease period. This lease period determines the validity of that offered IP address. Is it for 1 hour, 8 hour or 1 day, 8 day, etc. So in my case, I got the lease at September 27, 2025 at this time, and when my lease going to expire, it will expire on Sunday, September 28, 2025. That means I got the IP address offer at this time and it will expire this time. And then there is a IPv4 default gateway details, and see this is the DHCP server. My DHCP server is my internet router and this is the IP address of DHCP server and this is the DNS server. So in my case, my default gateway, my DHCP server and DNS server are the same device, which is my internet router. In larger network, these are maybe different devices because they have to manage lot of network devices. So lot of resource utilization is required. So DNS server will be different, DHCP server will be different, and gateway will be different. So this is how you configure your PC to accept the IP address from a DHCP server. This is how you configure a dynamic IP address into your computer. So in this chapter, we talk about the static IP address. We talk about the dynamic IP address. We have learned how to configure the static IP address in your computer. We have learned how to configure a dynamic IP address in your computer. And finally, I have explained the DHCP process, which is called DORA. Thank you very much for watching, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Enhance your skills using Irash Academy.